everybody, welcome back to Hyphenated. Here we talk about everything knitting and yarn. I'm Gabriella.
And I'm Jane, and today we are going to talk about wood versus metal needles. We are starting a new segment called This or That, in which we compare two options. So, Gabriella, this or that, are you a wood or metal needle fan?
You know what's really funny? I started out a big time wood fan. I mean, I loved wood needles, and I started with straight needles, and now I love circular metal needles. It's my go-to. What about you?
Exclusively, that's
you
all
know
you use?
Well, okay, so here's exclusively. It's my go-to. It's where it's pretty much what I pick up every time. There are some knitting needles that I really like that are wood, especially in the colder winter months. Wood is really nice. It warms up really nicely. But I like the ones that are slick. And those tend to be certain brands. They don't make them anymore, but Lantern Moon made some beautiful wooden needles. Nirvana made some really nice wood needles. They have some beautiful double pointed needles. I don't know if they're still around anymore. Dreams make some good slick needles. Likey's make some good slick needles. But I've noticed on Likey's that the finish seems to... they don't stay as slick for as long. I don't know if the finish gets rougher or something, but they end up not being as slick. So what I like about those wood needles is they give me the same kind of feeling as some of the metals do, with how slippery they are and how smooth they feel. So, but generally, I'm going to go for metal needles.
So I have always also been a diehard metal fan. Metal. But more recently I have started using and enjoying wood needles as well. And so when I started, I only had access to metal, like the hollow stainless steel types of needles, which are like the Hayas and the Chaogus.
Oh, okay.
Because I was in China, so I had the
Sure.
Chinese needles. And the other option was bamboo, but the bamboo needles that I could find were low quality and like often came apart, like the tip would separate out of the cable.
Yeah.
So I just did not like those. Plus the cables were horrible too.
That's for circular needles, right? So you were using circulars.
I started on circulars pretty straight away, as far as I recall.
Smart.
No, actually, that's not true.
Liar.
I had very long bamboo double points, like this long, like more than a foot long. That's what was kind of commonly available in large sizes there. But that's not very practical for doing anything other than like chunky scarves. So, so from there I progressed to circular needles, and I much preferred the metal needles there. And then I started getting my hands on like Addy needles, and I loved Addies because they are so slick, like you're saying.
Yep.
Those are, the finish on them, I guess it's like nickel plating.
They're still my favorite needles.
Super slick.
Yeah.
Loved them.
But now you say you're moving towards wood.
Yeah, well, it wasn't till recently that I even tried wood needles, because I just assumed they'd be similar to bamboo in feel, and they kind of are, but they definitely have a slicker finish and tend to have sharper points, I've noticed as well.
Love. Yes.
I pretty much always want a sharp point, with few exception. But yeah, the wood needles, just if I'm knitting like either a slippery yarn or a yarn that doesn't have inherent stretch. So when I'm knitting like cotton, linen, plant fibers that are very hard on the hands anyway, I find having the give of a wooden needle just makes a nicer feel on my hand.
I agree with you. Yeah, I like wooden needles, especially if I'm doing something that has a lot of high silk content or linen. Those are the ones that I tend to go to. I don't knit a lot of cotton, but I'll do like a linen blend or a silk blend. And because the silk can be so slippery, Many times I'll go to a wood needle. And also with the linen too, although linen doesn't tend to be as slick. But you know what I used to do with the wood needles? If they weren't sharp enough, I would take a file to them and sharpen those suckers up. And then I would take like wood wax and put wood wax around them because it's something that doesn't, you put it very fine and then you can polish it. And it worked great because I liked really sharp. And you can't sharpen metal needles like you can wood ones. True. So, and they make good weapons. Just in case. You never know. Traveling alone. Take your needles, man. Females need protection sometimes. You get to see a whole nother side of me.
Yeah, I've actually had that commented, like, how are you allowed to take, 10 millimeter US 15 circular metal needles on a plane? Like, that's a serious weapon. You could totally strangle somebody with those.
Yeah, or stab them. Yeah.
True.
And yet, we get to take them on a plane. Yes, we do.
Yeah. So
you never know. That quiet little knitter could really be like an assassin, a wild assassin that gets paid by like the CIA and the FBI. Russian KGB, gnarly assassin. Just sitting there knitting. This is not...
Back to the topic. I have also heard complaints from others when I've been knitting with metal needles because of the clicking or scraping sound. That's another. And I've also heard from others, like our friend has dogs, and one of them was upset, I guess, by the sound of the metal needles, but she could knit with the wood needles. Fine.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's another.
Isn't that funny? I guess it depends on how much you're clicking. Like, are you clicking a lot with your metal needles? Are you a terribly loud knitter? Click. Yeah, and if you are, it's like I don't think it's that loud. Maybe it is.
I never thought so either, but I was knitting in a room where we were...
Was everybody silent?
We were, like, working on some project, and, like, I was kind of in the background while two other people were doing their work, and one of the guys was like, that scraping sound is, like, I could tell it was just, like, grating on him. And he said, my grandmother used to knit, and I just remember it being, like, a click, but this is, like, a scrape. I don't know if it was the particular needles I was using or what.
That is so funny.
I had to stop because I was clearly aggravating him.
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of think, like, I guess it depends on the situation, but you would have to be so uptight, I would think.
Some people are just sensitive to noise, and especially if you're trying to, like, focus on something.
Well, if they're trying to work and you're sitting there knitting, clicking away, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if someone's trying to sleep or something, like on a plane, and you're, like, clicking away. I have really irritated people when I was learning how to knit, and I used straight needles, because I would drop one of my needles and it would be like clank and then roll down the aisle or roll down underneath the chair, underneath someone else's chair, right?
Excuse me.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, and I do that sometimes when I take my yarn, my ball will go rolling down, wherever, and there I am trying to like get underneath somebody's chair to get my ball of yarn or my needle. We could do a whole thing on like how to irritate the people that you're with your knitting.
There are some other options we didn't talk about in terms of needle material, though. How do you feel about like the nylon, acrylic, plastic, those? I had a set of plastic Debbie Bliss, my first interchangeable needles. Were a set. Made needles? I
think they were Debbie Bliss. I'm almost positive they came in a pink case. They were plastic. I don't even remember how they attached, but they,
Was it Denise?
Maybe.
That the brand? Because I have a brand of Denise plastic, and they like click in, and they have super like chunky cables. Yeah.
Did they have black
I don't remember.
stoppers?
It's a little travel pack, which is kind of cool because it folds up.
No, mine was like a big old fat book. I don't remember. Anyway, I might still have them. We could figure it out. But they, you know, if I'm desperate, I will use them. If I don't have the needle with me, the needle size, you know, because it's just like for some reason I don't have the needle size with me. Sorry, our light just went off. I will, you know, go to one of those if I have to. And they're not great. They're not my go-to, but there is something that doesn't feel as nice in my hands about it, and they don't feel as slick, I don't think, as some of the some of the wood or the metal needles. So I don't really, and I don't like that. It tends to be that some of those cables are a little bit too thick, so they're a little unwieldy. They don't bend or flex as easily as a lot of the cables on the other needles, on the wood or the metal needles.
Yeah, yes. The plastic needles, I feel, are a little more grabby, which could be nice if you're using a really slippery yarn. And I generally don't love the feel of them, but I do have these. I don't even know what they are. Maybe nylon or something. They were from my grandmother, like an inheritance of needles, you know. They have horrible cables, but somehow I kind of like the feeling of them because they're kind of bendy.
Okay.
They're like this weird kind of light pink color.
I don't know if I've ever seen or touched anything like that.
Yeah.
So it sounds nicer than the ones that I experienced.
I kind of like them somehow. I wouldn't magic loop on them because the cable's way too stiff for that. But just doing something in the round is like a large tube in the round is good.
Right. Well, and some of the really, really big needles, like the size 36s or 35s or something like that, they tend to have a huge fat cable.
Right.
As well, which I've noticed. And that didn't seem particularly awful to me at the time.
Yeah. I do notice the plastic needles tend to seem to break more frequently than the other materials. They just, I don't know, I've seen a lot of them snap. Like bamboo as well, I guess. But
I've
if
noticed.
you sit on them.
Yes, or really thin needles, really like size 3s and 2s for sure. But I have noticed also that sometimes the attachment from the cable to the needle on some of the wood ones, they pop out. They're not as well made for some reason. I'm not quite sure why.
Maybe it's the glue just
doesn't adhere to the wood as well or something. Or sometimes there's a little metal piece between the wood and then the cable. And that sometimes will come apart, or will have a catch in it. Like you'll catch when you're knitting. It'll catch your yarn. Not horribly, but it does make a little kind of like speed bump in your knitting. Have you noticed that?
I have noticed that more likely on interchangeable needles, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes the join can be not that smooth, even on fixed circulars. So yeah, true. I guess it just depends on like what your, needles are such a personal choice.
Yes.
When I was advising people customers in the yarn store, I would always say before you invest in like an interchangeable set or anything, just try a bunch of different brands and types of needles, and then you'll, find what you prefer the best, and then you can stick to that.
Yeah, there are some people who just absolutely, like our last boss, loved bamboo needles. Loved bamboo. That was like what she exclusively used, and loved them. And I don't particularly like them, but everybody has their personal choice. So I would say there is no wrong needle, or better needle. It's just what is your preference.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. So let us know in the comments, what kind of needle do you prefer? Wood, metal, acrylic, plastic, bamboo, something else we didn't discuss? Those square needles.
Oh, which I have not tried yet.
I did try them, and I didn't find any advantage of them over traditional round needles.
Interesting.
So.
Okay.
But yeah, let us know in the comments what kind of needles you like, and we're happy to chat more.